to another episode of the podcast, Come Over for Dinner. I am so glad you're joining me today. Today I have a very special guest. Her name is Sarah. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
She is a fabulous sourdough bread baker. She helps make the sourdough bread for the church communion. She does a lot of hosting. She hosts a parish discipleship group at her home, a small group, kind of Bible study type thing. She hosts baby showers. She runs an Airbnb, and I know there is a lot more. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Sarah.
Well, my husband and I own a construction company, so we do that. I have 3 teenagers, and they are, all in secondary now and kind of independent. I love to do hospitality. I've started out really small when I was first married, and we've slowly been doing more and more of it. And so, now we're doing big groups, and what used to feel really overwhelming feels less overwhelming.
Yes.
As you've been doing it for years.
It gets easier.
It does get easier.
And real quick, her name is Sarah Mortimer. If you are ever in the area, she does run an Airbnb. What is the title of it?
Yeah, we call it a Mortimer Ridge Guest House.
Mortimer Ridge Guest House. And it is beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
And it is online. I did see the pictures of it. I saw the outside one day, and I had that thought, because the views are just stunning, of Moscow. And I had that thought, if I have family visit, and I'm trying to convince him to move here, I might have to rent her Airbnb.
Yes, that would not be the first time that folks have sent their family to stay up there in order to convince them that this is a really nice place to live.
It's not just, in the wintertime, Moscow can seem a little dreary, but when you have views like that, you just kind of forget about the fact that it can be a little dreary in the cold winter months.
Yep, absolutely. Looking out on trees. My husband and I grew up in Oregon, so originally Oregonians. And when we moved to the Palouse, that was something that we missed immediately, was all the forests and the trees.
Yes.
Of course, we were living in Colfax, which, if you know anything about the area, is not close to where we live now. 25 miles, west of where we are now.
Yes.
So I always said it felt like you were living in a ditch a little bit, because it was like everywhere you looked, it was wheat fields and rolling hills.
Yes.
But you felt like you couldn't get up and see what was actually going on above those hills.
Right.
And so when we found this property and we drove up there the first time, it just felt like a dream come true to be up high.
It felt like Oregon.
It felt like Oregon again. And so we built our guest house and lived in that for the first 5 years that we were here, and that we were in Moscow. And our view looks east, kind of down Moscow Mountain, and it looks so much like where we grew up. So we're really grateful.
Oh, that is wonderful. There. Yes, that makes you feel like you're at home.
Yes.
It makes Moscow feel like home.
Yes, it does.
Okay, well, share with us one of your favorite menus. I know you serve dinner to your family every night, but one that you would also serve to guests, one that you could maybe double, triple, that sort of thing.
Well, often when I'm trying to cook dinner and I'm having to think about what to make, if I don't feel like going grocery shopping, you start digging through your cupboards, looking through your fridge to see what you have. And one evening I opened my fridge and looked in there, and I had some chicken, and I had some asparagus, and I had red potatoes, those little red potatoes.
It's a good start.
And I thought, that reminds me of something. What is it? And all of a sudden it came back to me when I was in college. I grew up outside of Portland, so I didn't grow up in Portland. But one of the special things that we would do is drive into the city, and we would eat at this restaurant called Perry's. And Perry's had this dish that we loved, and it was called warm salad, which sounds horrible. It doesn't sound like something you'd want to eat, but it was delicious. And it was basically a roasted chicken or pieces of roasted chicken with asparagus and then roasted red potatoes. And that was the main ingredient. And then the salad part is that you would dress it with a dressing.
I love dressing.
Yep, right over the top, and then crumble blue cheese and pecans over that.
Oh, that sounds
amazing.
amazing.
It would be hot, and it would kind of all meld together. You know how the blue cheese kind of melts and clings to the potatoes and with the seasoning. And it was so simple and so good. And so I stood there and looked at those 3 ingredients and thought, I'm going to try to recreate this. And I happened to have everything to do it. And it became a family favorite of ours.
And so you created your own tried and true recipe.
Yeah. And so I always have to preface it with, we call it warm salad. It sounds gross, but it's actually quite good.
It's actually delicious, especially on a cold winter day.
Yes. And I can't think of an alternate I should come up with an alternate name, but that's what we call it. And I think it's just that, so many of the salads we enjoy do have the blue cheese and the pecans. And so when you do that over, these other ingredients, you get that kind of same.
Well, and when you think of
savory.
salad, often you're thinking of lettuce. That's the
Yes.
first thing that
Yes.
comes to mind. So you're thinking warm lettuce.
Yes, unless you grew up in the 50s and then you're thinking about Jell-O.
Well, or Jell-O, yes. Oh, that would not be good warm either.
No, that would not be good warm. So yeah, that is one. I thought I would share that one just because I don't think you're going to, I already looked on the internet and you can't find it. I even looked up Perry's and all you get are articles about how sad that they closed.
Oh, that is sad.
Yeah, that's, one that I've made it for guests and I make it for us as well.
So is this a one dish meal? Is that all you serve, or do you serve something with it?
Because I'm a bread baker and I always have bread in the house, we're going to have bread with it. So sourdough, hopefully. But yeah, so the bread, and then I do a salad. And, salads are funny. I've done recipes for salads. I'll look up, salad recipes and I will make them, but I always end up adapting them to whatever I have lying around or what I think sounds good. The book, Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, it's a cookbook. She does such a fantastic job of helping you figure out how to build a menu and how to build dishes from scratch based on the idea that you need to integrate some salt, some fat, some acid, and then add heat in either the form of a spice or with, actual temperature heat. And she does such a great job. So that said, my salad is going to look different just depending upon what I've got lying around and what I'm in the mood for. But I did bring a recipe for an adapted, kind of a simplified version of Tegan Gerard from Half Baked Harvest, her sun-dried tomato, crispy chickpea and herb salad. And I always love this one because the chickpeas and the sun-dried tomatoes are pantry items that I'm mostly always going to have lying around, so I can throw this together. And you're going to fry up those chickpeas so they're kind of crispy, almost like a crouton.
That sounds delicious.
And
I've never done that.
Oh, it's really, really yummy. And you can season it with whatever you like a garlic powder or salt and pepper even is really good. And then cool them, because if you put hot chickpeas on a cold salad, you're going to immediately wilt everything. And I know that from experience. I may or may not have done that once or twice. And then whatever herbs you have. So I think she talks about using some dill and maybe some basil and parsley. But I don't know about you, but when I buy herbs at the store, I never use them all. And I always have little bits of herbs in the bottom of my crisper drawer. So I just grab whatever I've got, chop that up, and then toss it onto like the mixed greens, kind of the organic mixed greens that you can get. I think they come in like 16-ounce tubs. Throw that
great
all on
idea
there.
because you don't want to waste them, and fresh are the best if you have them. I guess as a substitute, could you use dried? Have you ever used dried?
I haven't, but if I was going to do that, I would probably add it to my dressing.
Okay.
So I'd probably make a dressing and then add the dried versions of those herbs just so that you get the flavors. But the liquid will kind of reconstitute the flavor.
That makes sense.
Add it to the liquid. So I would do that. And then whatever cheese I have, if I've got a goat cheese, I like goat cheese with it. Or if you want to just go with your extra, the rest of your blue cheese that you're using with your warm salad, you can just keep doing that. People tend to either really like blue cheese or really not like it. So if you put it in every dish, maybe they wouldn't be a fan. But
do you ever substitute blue cheese?
I haven't.
Just in case, like if you knew somebody didn't like blue cheese, what would you use?
Probably goat cheese would be my next one. And then Parmesan is also like a good quality Parmesan is so flavorful and delicious.
And pretty much everyone likes Parmesan.
Yes.
I mean, at least I haven't heard anyone say that they're opposed to that.
Yeah.
Even kids will eat Parmesan.
Yeah, absolutely. The warm salad, the one thing about it that I think I love is that creaminess that you get from a soft cheese. So I would probably pick a soft cheese over a hard
that one, probably goat cheese versus a Parmesan.
Versus a Parmesan. But
hopefully blue cheese. Hopefully you can convince people to like blue cheese.
My husband, Tim's not a huge fan of blue cheese, but if I keep it reasonable, and he likes it in this dish and with all the other components, it's really good. But
do you know if there's any blue cheeses that are more mild than other ones? Are there aged blue cheeses versus some that aren't? I don't know.
Yeah, you can get much milder ones. I think that in my experience, the higher quality the blue cheese, the more mild it is.
Okay.
So, if you get your blue cheese, I don't buy it pre-crumbled because I think it's treated with some preservatives and things when they pre-crumble it.
So
and
that
it tends to be dry.
Together,
yeah, so it doesn't stick and it tends to be a little drier. So I always buy a wedge. And two things that I don't skimp on with this recipe, at least with the worm salad and even with the cold salad part, is a good quality olive oil, because you can get the cheap olive oils, most of those are going to be already slightly rancid. And so getting a good quality olive oil and something that you're not going to put heat to, so the worm salad, when you put that dressing over the top, it shouldn't have ever been heated, and that's going to preserve all that flavor. And so a real peppery, tart. There's so many different kinds. We're blessed here in Moscow. We have ampersand. I don't know if you've been to that shop on Main Street.
I haven't recently, since I've moved back. I did years ago. I need to go back in.
Yeah. Well, they have got, just tons of different versions of olive oil, lemon olive oil and garlic olive oil. And I have a citrusy, it's like a blood orange olive oil.
Sounds delicious.
It's so good. And so, anytime you're making a recipe that has olive oil in it, I say go for those.
For the flavored ones.
Yep.
If someone doesn't have a specialty oil shop and they were just using, let's say, plain olive oil, what would you look for on the bottle besides extra virgin olive oil? Would you look for a country or first pressing?
Yeah. Now I have done some research on this, and I don't know if I can recall it off the top of my head, but if it has a date that it was packaged, that right there is a good sign that you have an olive oil producer who cares. Yeah. So you want it to have been bottled within the last, 4 months or so.
Okay.
And that's kind of hard to find. There's a brand called, I think it's California olive oil. I can picture the label. You can get it at all the grocery stores around here. And I believe America's Test Kitchen has rated it pretty high when they've done their testing.
Okay.
And it does have a press date on it. It'll say when the oil was pressed, which is what you're looking for. What you don't want is, and it's also packaged in glass, and it's a tinted glass.
Oh.
So olive oil is really susceptible to going rancid by sunlight. So if you're getting an olive oil that's packaged in, like, say, a clear plastic, or it's in plastic at all, all those toxins are going to leach into your olive oil. You want something really pure to preserve.
Glass is the best if you can find it.
You can get it in glass, and if it's a tinted glass, that's going to help preserve the quality of the oil over time as well.
Okay, well, good tips.
I love olive oil. My favorite olive oil is the Moroccan olive oil, because in Morocco, olive trees really struggle to survive. It's a really rough environment for them, and so they tend to put all these delicious, like, peppery notes into the olive oil because their polyphenol level is really high in those, and they are so tasty. I just love them. So if you're going to dip your bread in an olive oil, if you can get it, look for a Moroccan olive oil. People always think of, Mediterranean countries, not Africa.
I will have to look for one. And the story of the struggle making it a more flavorful olive oil is so interesting. I have not heard that with olives. I've heard that with grapes.
Yes, it's true with wine as well. Yeah. So I went online back in Christmas because I thought, let's make a great gift for people. And I found a producer of olive oil in Morocco that imports, and I got several bottles, and it's very good.
Can you tell us where you found it?
I'd have to look it up.
Okay.
I can't think of it off the top.
It,
as a link or something.
So just if you're new here, or if you have forgotten, everything is posted on comeoverfordinner.com. If you go to the recipes page, it's a blog post or a blog type post where we have her recipes, links, and anything we talk about.
Sure.
So
yeah.
I can post that there.
Yeah, I'll find that producer. And so I bought several bottles of it, gave it as gifts, and we've opened one as well. And then I received as a gift an olive oil that's really good from a company called Brightland, I believe. And I think that there were quite a few Instagram ads around the holidays for their olive oil, but it is very good quality. And this one is like a chili oil, so it's got a spice to it, which is fun.
It sounds delicious.
Yeah. So stock up on those all. I'm a big fan of having some of these nicer ingredients around, especially like on a weeknight. I have no trouble giving my family whatever olive oil I can scrounge up. But when you have people over for dinner, it's nice to give them the nicer
ramp it up a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
I'll have to stop by Ampersand. So if you ever visit Moscow, that's a place to visit downtown is Ampersand. Is it olives and vinegars?
Yeah.
Or most, not olives, but oils.
Oils and vinegars. The vinegars, oh my goodness. Yeah. They're delicious as well.
Okay. It's my weekend plan.
There you go.
So your full menu would be worm salad, the half-baked harvest salad.
Yep.
And a bread.
And then a bread. And I usually, I make a lot of sourdough because, as you mentioned, I do it for the church for communion. So I'm making, doing about 7 or 8 loaves every other week for communion. But then on my off weeks, I'm still probably going to make 2 or 3 loaves, and we'll just put them in the freezer. I cool them completely. I put them in the freezer wrapped, in a Ziploc bag or whatever. I do buy these cheaper bread bags at Winco, and they come in a big package because I do go through a lot of bread bags.
Yes.
And put those in the freezer. And so I can thaw one of those in my microwave. I just thaw it just like you would meat. So if you're going to, if your microwave has that setting where you can thaw a pound of meat, I just thaw a pound of bread, and it comes out mostly thawed. The middle is going to be a little frozen, but if I do that a couple hours before dinner, then it's perfect by the time we're ready to eat.
Do y'all serve it toasted with butter and honey, or how do you serve it, or just slice it?
I just slice it. The olive oil and vinegar is so good.
And vinegar on the bread?
No, you'll just dump a little bit of that olive oil in a small oil dish, like a little tiny, kind of little custard sized dish, and then drizzle the vinegar into that. So then when you dip, you're getting a little bit of both.
Okay, that sounds really delicious. At Italian restaurants, I've seen the olive oil with seasonings. But I don't think I've seen vinegar.
Oh, the vinegar is, But
if it's a real high quality vinegar, that would taste delicious.
It's so good.
It'd be like a salad dressing almost. I mean, your own homemade. Yes. With that sourdough bread. I bet that is really good.
It's good. And the, just the basic balsamic vinegar it's almost like a syrup. It's so thick. And
that's another thing you want aged, right? If you're going to do something like that. I think the more aged it is, the more syrupy and sweet it becomes.
I don't know as much about vinegar, but I don't know what the process is to, you think about if you've ever done a reduction, if you've ever made a reduction, you're just getting all that water out and just getting more and more flavor. And that's like how that vinegar, it feels like reduced more because it's a lot thicker and it has a lot more flavor. So, I always have a bottle of that lying around. And once the vinegar and the olive oil and the bread come out, we're done. I mean, there's no stopping me at that point.
You probably need to have limited amounts or no one will eat dinner.
Well, the key is don't slice the bread till you see the whites of their eyes. If I start slicing bread before that,
starving, then they can have some bread.
If you think I'm just going to pre-slice this loaf an hour or two before dinner, no.
They're snacking and
I have no willpower for that.
Yeah, the whole thing is gone.
Yes.
Are there any particular shortcuts or time savers you want to point out, or is it already listed in the menu I'm going to post?
Well, on this menu, I think it's already pretty much there. Buying your greens. I love the pre-washed greens. I think they're good quality. They taste delicious. Saver. You just dump it into your big salad bowl and add your ingredients, and you're ready to go. That's probably with this one. And then doing your bread in advance.
Okay.
And I didn't mention a dessert. I didn't think of a dessert, but when I do dessert for meals, I usually do those the day before. I usually try to do something early.
If you can put the dessert out of your mind and only focus on what needs to be done last minute, it really does help.
Yeah. It does. And I do have teenage daughters who are pretty good bakers. So that's another thing. If I don't get it done in advance, I can usually ask one of them to whip something up, and they're great about doing that too. So
speaking of, did they just enter the recent Logos school contest?
Yes, they did.
So Logos school for, I think it's 7th through 12th grade, they put on what's called a Nights Fest, and it's so much fun. They put it on in the middle of the dreary winter between Christmas break and spring break, just to give the kids about 3 days of a break. They still go to school every day, but it's a whole festival of
so fun
contests and competitions and games and speakers and workshops, costumes,
and everything. Yes, I got to teach a sourdough class at
That's
Nights
what I was going to ask you. I thought I saw your name on one of the workshops.
Interesting. I have taught a lot of people how to make sourdough, and when I first started, it was a start to finish at least a 4-hour process, and that was condensing it significantly, because you've got quite a lot of inactive time with sourdough where it just sits. And so I would create different stages, and then we would do it. I could do it in about 4 hours. And so for Nights Fest, they asked me if I could condense it down into 2 hours, and I got it done in 90 minutes.
Wow. That's a record.
Wow. I've just gotten better at teaching it. You start out with a lot of ideas, a lot of things you need to communicate, and I truncated it down, and I had dough at various stages of the process that I was able to show, and we got through it, and it was really fun.
How did you learn sourdough? So for a lot of people wanting to start bread baking, which the whole 2020 thing cracked me up, because I have been baking my whole life and have always been able to go to the grocery store and buy yeast.
Mm-hmm.
During 2020 shutdowns, you could not buy yeast in a grocery store.
Yeah.
The only way I finally got some is my sister, 5 hours away, found a big block of it at her Sam's Club. So in the bulk package, there were 2. And so she gave me one and had one. So I was set for yeast for a while. But apparently they were the only ones to get a shipment in.
It's funny.
Months.
I bought a big brick of the yeast during COVID quarantine out of necessity. And now it's just kind of ingrained in me that you buy yeast in big bricks just in case.
Just in case. Because it was, desperate times. Every time I went to the grocery store, I was looking for yeast and never there.
Never there. Yes.
So,
and locating flour was challenging too. But I was well into sourdough by 2020. And so that was nice. I was, many people I think embarked on it. Plus so many folks were home. Mm-hmm. And when you think of sourdough, I think it's intimidating for a lot of people. And you think about something that's going to take quite a lot of time. So the intimidation factor, along with the need for a lot of time to focus on it, people were afforded that for the first time for many folks. So it became really popular.
So how long have you been doing it and how did you learn?
I think I've been doing sourdough for 7 or 8 years. And I was encouraged to learn sourdough. How was I encouraged? I had several friends. Oh, I could tell you the story. So, my husband's currently an elder at our church, but he had been a deacon. And once a year we would do an elder deacon kind of fellowship dinner where everyone would get together and we would have a meal. And one year I showed up to that dinner and the first thing in the buffet line was this incredible looking bread. And it was a big bowl of this, the most beautiful bread. And I grabbed a piece of it, sat down to eat. And our mutual friend, Catherine Church, was sitting across from me and she said, "Oh, this is, Rachel's bread. It's that delicious tartine bread." And I thought, somebody we know made this. I was immediately thinking it had come from a bakery. Baker. Yeah, somebody we know made this. And she said, "Yeah, it's Rachel's been making it." So I can't remember if I talked to Rachel directly or another mutual friend who I knew had been also baking it. I think she might have mentioned 2 different names, but I went and talked to her and I asked, "Where did you learn how to make this?" And she said, "It's this cookbook." So I grabbed the tartine cookbook off Amazon. And I learned using that book and just kind of texting in with those ladies and kind of checking in with them. It was a very complicated recipe compared to what I do now. And so I cooked bread out of that book for a couple of years, but there was a lot of hands-on time. You spent a lot of time having to turn the bread. And I would say, I can't remember if it was every 2 hours or every 2 or 3 hours, you had to do something with the bread. So it made it a little challenging if you had a work to go to or you had stuff going on. Right. And I found that I didn't want to bake very often because I would feel like I needed a whole day.
You had to be stuck in that room or in that house constantly.
Unless you did alarms. What I did and you took your bread in the car with you places, which I did do.
Is hilarious.
I more than once had a bucket of bread in my back seat.
Instead of a baby strapped.
Oh no, I absolutely used the seatbelt and clipped in my sourdough and took it places with me. And that it was hilarious and kind of funny. Yeah. And then right before 2020, actually, it was January of 2020. Rachel and she was speaking at a conference at G3, which is in Georgia. And so she asked me to go along with her and we flew out there and we were talking bread and food and everything on the way. And she said, "Are you still using that tartine recipe?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she said, "Oh, you need to move on to the sourdough made simple. That recipe you get the same results. It's so much less, hands-on time."
Cookbook?
It's a different cookbook. I brought a sourdough made simple by Emily Raffa, and it is artisan sourdough made simple.
Artisan sourdough made simple by Emily, which is Emile, and then Raffa?
I think Raffa, Raffa. And so I got this thinking there's no way that could work. You get in your mind, it has to be the way I do it.
Right. If they're doing it very complex, then you don't want to skip anything.
You don't want to skip anything. And the first time I tried her recipe and it turned out beautifully and it was every bit as good. And it's just so simple compared to that other recipe. So you got great results with the other recipe. I didn't have anything wrong with it other than that it just took a lot more of my time.
Right.
And so this one's nice because not all of us have all day to be at home doing bread. I meet a lot of women who work or are students, or even if you have a lot of little kids and babies, you can't just put everything on hold for sourdough. So I switched over to this recipe, and then I feel like sourdough really took off for me because then I could make it weekly and not feel like it displaced all of my time. I could churn out lots of loaves and feel like it was doable. So I hit my record was back in December. 1 week I did 30 loaves of sourdough because I did it for Christchurch for our communion. I did loaves for a PDG that was doing a fondue party, and they needed, I think it was 16 loaves. And then I did my own PDG that week. So I did several loaves for them. And then there was a fourth thing. I think my mom was hosting a luncheon and asked if she could buy a couple loaves for me. So and then I think I broke my oven because it hasn't been working right since.
Like, I'm done. Did you do it all in one day?
No, I did it.
But over the course of 2 or 3 days in a row? I
did it over the course of, I think I did it in 2 days. I can do 12 loaves I have enough proofing baskets, bowls, all the things to do 12 loaves pretty easily. So I think I did 12 loaves, and then I might have done another 12. And then I think I did 8 the third day.
Wow.
So, and then, like I said, my oven's been a little bit weird ever since. So it's not meant for that. I don't think when they create these appliances for the home cook, no one thinks
you're going to be doing that many sourdough loaves. How many do you cook at one time in your oven?
I can do 4 in my oven.
Because you can't crowd them too much, I guess.
Well, I have crammed in there pretty tight. I use it's basically like a steamer pan that caterers will use. They're a stainless steel square shaped pan. They're about 8 inches deep, I think. 12 by 8. I'm trying to remember exactly this. People ask me this all the time what the dimensions are, and I always have to look it up. But I can get 4 of them in my oven. Okay. So one of the things with sourdoughs, I thought absolutely 100% had to be done in a cast iron Dutch oven. But really the key is a lid. If you have an oven safe vessel that has a lid on it, you're going to be able to bake sourdough in it.
So are your loaves square? Or rectangle?
No, my loaves are round. So the interesting thing about sourdough is, if you're used to yeasted bread, yeasted bread will take the form of whatever vessel it's baked in. And so it uses the size as sort of its border for where it's going to go. So that's why obviously you put it in a round something, you're going to get a round loaf. You put it in a rectangle, but sourdough doesn't do that. And so that's what's interesting. What sourdough does is it's all about your shaping technique. So as you're shaping your loaf, you're basically wrapping those gluten strands around the loaf like a corset. And so you shape your loaf, and then the strands dictate the shape of your loaf, how you shape the bread.
That is so interesting.
Yeah, so you could put a round loaf in a square pan and you get a round loaf.
Round loaf in a square pan remains round.
Yes.
Good to know.
Yeah.
How did you come up with your starter? Through a friend, or did you create a starter?
I created it. I created it and learned a few things and had some fails. And then, but yeah, I think I've always been like I want to go to the headwaters of any project and figure it out from the beginning. And I wasn't.
Cookbook probably tells you how to create a starter.
This book has a
recipe.
Has a recipe for it, and it's really quite simple. It's just, starter is so funny because when you tell people it's alive, they get really intimidated, and anything that's alive you could kill, right? Like a plant or a pet.
Think of yeast, yeast is alive.
It's a lot harder to kill than you would think. And I try to tell people, it's tough to kill starter. Even if it dries up and completely goes to powder, you can reconstitute it and feed it, and it'll usually come back to life.
So it's not scary. You can do it. Everybody listening who wants to, you can do it.
You absolutely can.
You won't kill it.
The worst thing, our local water can be quite hard and have a lot of minerals. So if you are building a starter, if you're making your own starter, you might start with a purified water or distilled or something from the grocery store when you're first starting out, because over time those minerals will kind of deplete the yeast growth, and it'll make it hard to keep your starter healthy.
That's a good tip.
I
would not have thought of that.
Well, I've learned it over our time here in Moscow, teaching a lot of women how to make sourdough, and they'll report, oh, it's going great. And then 2 or 3 months in, I cannot get my sourdough to work. It's not coming out. It's obviously a starter problem. So I did a little research, and in fact, it should be water.
Heavy, weighed down with minerals and that sort of thing.
Yep.
What is your cooking inspiration? When you are looking to serve your family, do you have a certain place that you go, that you collect recipes or anything like that? Yeah,
I have. So I love cookbooks. And I actually was just thinking the other day, I should use my cookbooks more. Because, with me, I'll buy a cookbook, get inspired, make something, make 2 things, and then it goes on the shelf and I forget about it completely.
Yes.
So, and I do a half-baked harvest, Tegan Gerard, her recipes really speak to me. I like layered recipes. I like things that have a sauce. Like if you can end it with a sauce of some sort, I
do love
it.
a good sauce.
I do too, or a dressing,
like
or something
really dry and tasteless.
You can resurrect a pretty bad dish if you get a good sauce.
If you have a good sauce, yes, it can be a saving grace.
Yes, in fact, the last
to your dish,
the last few recipes I've made, I thought maybe I should branch out a little bit because it's all been these saucy comfort foods, and I made a Swedish meatball last weekend, and then I did like a Tuscan chicken last night that is very saucy. And so, yeah, I like those kind of things. So that kind of inspiration. I also, sometimes you just get in a slump and you don't want to cook. It just doesn't sound fun.
Right.
And so the two things that I do is I usually need to clean out my fridge. That's usually and my pantry. If you open your fridge and it's just a disaster, you just kind of want to shut the door and go watch Netflix or something. But if you get that space kind of organized and make some sense out of your pantry and restock those things that you love to eat, and that right there is usually inspiration. And then the second thing I'll do is watch a good food show. I mean, sometimes
That's a great
just
idea.
Sitting down and watching. One of our favorites has been Chef's Table, which was a Netflix series. Chef's Table is just very beautifully done, little short episodes on a specific chef. And all of the chefs are world famous chefs, but they kind of go back to their story of how they started, and they'll film them with their family and what inspired them and how they got going. And so much of it is just their heart and soul and the effect that their food has had on their community and on their family and the people around them. And that makes me want to cook.
Yes.
Like hearing that, it's like, oh yeah, food is powerful.
Yes.
It actually builds community and it does so many good things for people, and it's important. And so it feels like important work. And so that usually inspires me to get going.
And seeing a visual of something really inspires me. If I see someone making it and then you see the end product, I don't know, just something about it makes me want to go recreate it.
Absolutely.
It looks delicious.
Food can be so beautiful, and it is art. And so when you think about it that way, it kind of jumps, food can feel very boring at times. You just like, well, we'll make another meal, and we do it so much it loses its fun. But when you look at it that way, or see it through the eyes of a lens, looking at it as art, it really does elevate the whole thing. And our family had a really unique experience where we had watched Chef's Table, and there is a chef on there that's featured in Mexico City, and our good friends live in Mexico City. And so in March of 2020, right before everything shut down, we were able to go visit them and eat at his restaurant in Mexico City, which was kind of like a bucket list thing.
Yes.
And then it sort of makes you want to then do all the chefs on Chef's Table, but you realize that's probably never going to happen.
That bucket list may remain.
Yes,
until your dying day.
There is one chef in Italy that the kids just say if they could go eat at anyone's restaurant, they would want to go eat at Massimo's restaurant in Italy. But yes, so that show, I do really love it. It's a great show. There's a couple that aren't my favorite, like anything, there's some that you really enjoy and some that you don't enjoy.
Do they ever share their recipes, or do they just
they highlight the recipes? They don't give you the recipes. However, they show the process and the ingredients and then kind of the final. And it's, but this chef, Enrique Olvera down in Mexico City, does have a home cook type cookbook, and it was given to me as a birthday gift from my friend Becky. So I do, and I don't,
great.
So some of his recipes are in there. I'm trying to think if it was anything that we ate at the restaurant. He's really, he does some beautiful things with tortillas. Like, I think you always think of Mexican food as a real humble, cheap food, but when you see it done like in high,
at a high-end restaurant,
fine dining, it's really pretty inspiring.
Wow.
Yeah.
What about your best prep tip? When you're prepping, you mentioned a couple of things, just, straightening your pantry, straightening your refrigerator. Do you do anything else? I really love, there's certain details of the meal that I just think are great. And one is to have nice linens. I love linen fabric. And so I have quite a collection of linen tablecloths and linen napkins and all of that. And I realized that if I didn't have those kind of prepared, I would not use them. So I try to keep things cleaned and at least have most of them ironed. And I have
some clear plastic tubs. I think I got at Marshall's, and I just have napkins just stacked in those, all ready to go. So I can pull those at any time.
And they're pre-ironed.
They're pre-ironed. Yep. And then I do have,
table.
Yep. Just put them on the table. And what's nice is I can pull that tub of napkins down, hand them to my girls, and they can go with it. And I also have a couple tubs that are full of just like water goblets. They're not a glass we're going to use for our day in and day out meals. Like my family's not going to use them, but for Sabbath dinner or, on a Sunday or whatever, I can just pull those out. There's 12. I have 3 tubs of 12. I usually have about 12 people around my table. So I just pull one down and hand them to the girls, and they can immediately go set the table with that. So just some of those details that I have spent time frantically ironing a tablecloth 20 minutes before someone shows up. And I just never want to do that again. Fun. Yeah, no, it'd be better to not do the tablecloth. Just
like, let's just skip the tablecloth. Yes, this is too stressful.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's some of the things that I like to do. I really do love to make things ahead of time. And for me, it just gives me peace of mind, and I feel prepared. So having bread in the freezer is something that I'll always have, or at least have bread going quickly, within a day or two before I'm going to have people over. And there's like a make ahead mashed potato. It's called creamy mashed potato dish that the Pioneer woman does.
Oh, I love
that
those.
Is so good. And it freezes so well. It has cream cheese in it, which I think adds kind of to the moist creaminess of them. And so they freeze, but they thaw so well.
Which is surprising. It's not surprising I did have to research this, because I had made those and put them in the freezer. And like you say, they defrosted beautifully. They were amazing. And so my in-laws had red potatoes in their garden one summer. And we dug potatoes, and there were so many that I thought, well, I'm just going to freeze them. I'm going to
put them up for
them and mash them and freeze them. We're going to have amazing mashed potatoes. Just pull them out of the freezer. I pulled those bags out months later, and it was just the nastiest, soggiest mess. And I researched, well, how in the world did one turn out and the other didn't? But from my research, you have to have fat in there to freeze it and it to freeze well. So with hers, you have butter and cream cheese,
lots of fat,
and maybe some sour cream.
Yeah,
you just have
heavy whipping cream.
Somehow heavy whipping cream. And so somehow the way it binds it all together and freezes, perfect.
It comes out.
But if you try to just mash potatoes and put nothing, just put plain mashed potatoes that have been boiled in water, doesn't work.
Oh yeah.
They get real mealy.
Well, and I know I've done that because there's a potato roll an Amish potato roll recipe that you mash potatoes for, and I'll pre-mash potatoes for that. Well, they're unseasoned, and they come out looking not very yummy.
But since you could probably still use it in a roll.
Well, they go right into the dough, and you don't even know they're there. Okay. So it doesn't matter for that because the potato isn't really the featured ingredient, but I can see how they would be. They're kind of watery and sort of separate, when they're in the freezer. So make ahead mashed potatoes. I mean, those, I feel like if you've got some bread and some mashed potatoes, you're like halfway there with a meal. And I like that kind of, that I may not always use those potatoes that I have, but it is nice to know that they're there just in case.
For sure.
So
what is your best advice for showing warm hospitality to those coming into your home?
Well, a few things. I mean, the first for me is just making sure that my family and I are all in good fellowship, having a good attitude, being truly joyful in what I'm doing just creates a tone that I think people naturally feel comfortable coming into. And I mean, I've been in situations where I can feel myself not
being in good fellowship with your family.
Yes, and feeling very, frazzled and stressed, and maybe we've been snapping at each other, and that, is immediately the thing that I need to make it right with my family, make it right with the Lord. And then in fact, sometimes it can just be so subtle. If you just feel a little bit put out that you've been putting all that work in the kitchen while other people have been out doing things that seem fun to, that kind of thing. And then that just sort of builds over the time that you're prepping. And by the time people walk in the door, they're going to sense that when they're walking into that, that aroma of the home. So I think that is a big part of it. making people feel at ease. Not being too wrapped up in my, how I am perceived by people, and like worrying about the cooking or worrying about, the flaws. And I feel like the Lord worked that out of me really early on, because our first home was just a massive fixer-upper. And so for the first 10 years we lived in it, there was something wrong with the house at all times. Right. And so you're bringing people into that. You either are going to just never have anyone over, or you just get over it and realize that it's okay. That hole in the sheetrock is not going to ruin things unless you let it, unless you let it ruin things.
Out and talk about it and apologize for it and get nervous about it. Then it ruins things.
Then it really ruins things. So a lot of that prep on the front end, just the spiritual prep of being open-handed with your hospitality. And then I do love to greet people at the door. As my kids have gotten older, I've been giving them more and more responsibility of doing that, taking coats, greeting people, making sure people get a drink right away. I think once you hand somebody a drink, that kind of puts them at ease, and there's something, kind of refreshing and nice about that. It sort of gets the time going, gets the hospitality going. Our house is set up in such a way that it's easy to congregate right at the door. And so we're always like, get in here, come on in. The glasses are set out. We've got several drink options. One of the things that we try to do is do a little research on our guests. I'd say 75% of our guests are people that we don't know well. And so I'm not creepy research, but like just knowing their names and if they've got kids, their kids' ages, and are they homeschooled? Did they go to school? Thinking of things, how we can spark conversation. And, recently we had a family over that had all little kids. So actually 2 families that had a lot of little kids. And so earlier in the day, I asked my teenagers, could you make sure to just have a conversation with each of those little kids? Like ask them a question, like how old are you, or just anything.
Right. Just to get them talking, just to get them talking, saying something about themselves.
Yes. Yeah. And all families are different. Their kids operate different. My kids can be a little more reserved. So kind of pushing them to ask those questions. And I watched that work really well this last time. Just saw the little kids kind of get more comfortable, and even my own kids get more comfortable. And so, they're sort of in that span between childhood and adulthood. And so, being at the adult end of the table or the kid end of the table, they want to be able to do both. And so, we're trying to do that.
It is good to give them ideas of things to ask and just help them to have conversation starters, because that can be tough, especially if you're a little more of a shy personality.
Yeah. And when you're 16 and your guest is 4,
that's true. Like what was I doing when I was 4?
What I tell my kids a lot is, if you look at a lot of the friendships that my husband and I have, a lot of those people are a good 10 years younger, 8 to 10 years younger. So I said, you might be sitting across the table from a 7, 8-year-old that you might be really good friends with later on. You might go out to dinner with them and their wife someday. So it's easy. I say the gap gets smaller and smaller the older you get.
As you all become adults, it doesn't matter as much anymore. My sister has, I don't know if she bought it for herself or if a friend sent it to her. It's called Chat Pack, fun questions to spark conversations. And I'm pretty sure she said good things about it. So I haven't looked at it myself, but it's available on Amazon. It says ideal for dinner parties, family gatherings, car trips, hostess gifts, business meetings, classroom activities. So that's one thing that I had thought before, like, for people who really are thinking, well, what do I say to new people that come over? What can my kids say? I know her teens have enjoyed doing it with friends.
Even just having a list and like looking through it on your own time and just think, oh, that would be a good question. I think, my dad I watched my dad growing up really good at asking questions. And so, I remember him once saying he learned that watching someone else ask a lot of good questions. So if you've got a few questions, I usually ask people where they're from, how they met, if they're married, how long have you guys been married? How'd you guys meet? All those things.
If you have a few in your head that you can start from, it really does break the ice.
Yes, it does. And then probably another thing for warm hospitality, I don't know if it'd be warm hospitality, but it's just I think it helps put guests at ease, is I do a seating chart. So I keep, place cards at everyone's spot so they know they have a place to sit. And I think it does kind of put people at ease. I used to not do that because it felt kind of rigid, but then I'd watch people walk in the dining room and sort of stumble, not sure if they're sitting in, my seat or where do you guys usually sit and all that. Or
if there's couples, and then you have a single person. Well, are they sitting in the wrong order? Like, are they leaving enough room for the couple that wants to sit next to each other?
Yes. And splitting up couples, or do parents want to be near children, or all of that. So we do set that up beforehand.
How do you do name cards? Do you buy your own, or do you?
I do. I have, and this probably, earlier we were talking about kind of some tips, but I keep a little drawer in my kitchen that's just all hospitality tools. So in there I have place cards, and I've got a Sharpie, and I've got little place card holders, real simple ones I got off Amazon. I just get paper place cards off Amazon, like 100 at a time. So I have several hundred of them, kind of all lined up. And then I keep tea lights in there and matches and things that we're going to put on the table. And it's not a very big drawer, but I have it packed full of a lot of little things. And again, I've got my teenage girls setting the table a lot, so they know. So I'll go beforehand and I will write out everyone's names on a little pad of paper, set it by that drawer, and then they know they can go over there, make up the place cards. And then one of my girls has gotten really good at doing seating charts. I used to always do it, and now she kind of understands this is where mom sits, this is where dad sits. Here's where, if they're a couple, we'll put the husband kind of near dad, and we'll put the wife sort of, near him, but also so she can talk to mom. And she does a great job of kind of putting everybody out.
Training.
Yeah, it's good.
For when she has a house of her own
someday.
One day.
Yeah.
That is wonderful. What is your favorite kitchen item, and where can we find it?
Oh, I have a few. Well, so you asked me this and I had to ponder.
Are fine. It is hard to narrow it down.
The few that I feel like, we have so many that everybody knows, but I have a 42 cup Tupperware bowl that I just love. And it has a lid, and so Tupperware sells them in 3 sizes. I think that it's like a 42 cup, a 32, and like a 19 cup. And they are called the That's a Bowl, THATSA bowl. Okay. And they're just giant. So if you're doing a lot of prepping, you have a lot of people coming and you need to marinate a lot of chicken. Mm-hmm. It's just a huge bowl, and you can seal it up with that lid. So, smells don't come out, don't maybe stink up your whole refrigerator with that marinade smell or whatever. They just seal so tight.
So is this on Tupperware.com?
You can get them through Tupperware, but I think you have to get them through a rep. But I get them on Amazon. Oh. So reps will put them up.
They sell on Amazon.
You can get them on Amazon, and then eBay will have them too. So the first one was gifted to me, and I used it so much that I went and tracked down a set. So I have the big one, the first 42 cup. Then I got a second 42 cup that has the graduated sizes, so it goes all the way down to a very small one. But those are just workhorses. I mean, they're not particularly aesthetically beautiful. They're just a plastic bowl with a lid, but I could not do it without them.
Could not live without them.
And at one of those big ones, I can do up to 6 loaves of sourdough. I can mix 6 loaves of sourdough in one. And what I love is that because they're that kind of coat, that plastic that's kind of slick, they just clean up so easy. So when you're making sourdough, if you're using glass or you're using a stainless steel, you can totally do it. But when you go to clean that up, it can be a little bit of a chore. So these, you just use like a plastic bench scraper that's a little bit flexible, and you can just peel all that dough straight out of that bowl, and it's incredible. So like Thanksgiving, I mean, I use those. I should probably get another one. In fact, I borrowed for the sourdough class I did at Logos. I borrowed them from other ladies I knew that had them, and I thought, well, this is satisfying to have 6 bowls of sourdough going.
You can just grab it and go, not have to wait for the one batch to finish.
Yeah.
It fits in your refrigerator? And I guess, do you hand wash it, or does it fit in the dishwasher?
I just hand wash it because I'm going to probably use it again. It's so big. It would take up a lot of your dishwasher, and it washes so easy. So well. Yeah. So, when it was given to me, the friend said, you can return it if you don't want it. And it's so funny. I think back and it's like, I would never return this. It's kind of the thing where when you give it to someone, you feel like, well, this is just a plastic bowl. Merry Christmas. It seems kind of lame, but then
it's their favorite item.
After you use it a while, you kind of understand. So yeah, I love that.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of the brand Misen, Misen. They're chef's knife. So it's an online knife company. I think they do a lot of kitchen things. They had a big Instagram campaign for a while. My husband bought me one, and I absolutely love it. And I've ordered more of them. I think it's like an $85 knife. So I would say that's pretty inexpensive when you start looking at, like expensive knives. They can get real spendy. But it is just such, like, if I had to, I could get rid of every knife in that.
And
I
that's
could
the
just
one.
use
Do
that
you
one.
have? You said a chef's knife,
They have a chef's knife.
or which one did you?
Well, I
which
have
one
the
is your
chef's.
favorite?
The chef's knife is my favorite.
Okay.
So I have three. I think I have the bread knife, which is, their bread knife is fine, but there's a less expensive one I found on Amazon that's as good, But this chef's knife, it sharpens so well. I went ahead and invested in the electric knife sharpener.
Okay.
And I cannot think of the brand of that one right off the top of my head, but just having that one knife and making sure that it's really sharp is just glorious.
It's priceless. You'll have to tell me your brand, because I have one that's a manual knife sharpener and it's fine, but an electric one would be so easy.
The manual I got one at Williams Sonoma, it was like a good one, but I could never get my knives really sharp. I didn't ever feel confident. I knew I was doing if I was doing it right. And the electric one is, if you just put in electric knife sharpener, it's the one, it's like the one that comes up on Amazon or wherever. And, it's a bit of an investment. I think it's over $100, but to have a sharp knife
every day, and you're cooking
every day, and you could buy knife sets that are going to cost $800-900 if you just did the $185 knife and the $100 sharpener. You're set. Yeah,
you can get through.
It's a bargain
while you're saving money for more knives.
Yes. So that knife is great. I also threw on my list of must-haves a good cleaning clay or paste. And I don't know if you've ever used a cleaning clay.
Tell me about this, because I have seen it, but I don't.
There's some different brands. Well, there's one you can just get at Walmart that's called the pink stuff, and it's like in a pink. It's like a pink container, and it's in the cleaning section. My daughter told me about it. Yeah. But it's good. It's good.
Okay.
And you just use it with a magic eraser, and it'll clean out like your Dutch ovens. You can get like the inside of your oven beautifully cleans the inside. The top, if you have a glass cooktop, you can do that. I've used it on, if you have a porcelain sink, it'll clean that beautifully, or stainless steel even. Mine's like a composite, so I use it on that, but I wouldn't say that it's a dramatic difference because I have a black sink, so you don't see like a dramatic before and after. Even if you're going to use, now I think you're not supposed to actually use cleaning products on your seasoned cast iron or your seasoned skillets, but if you got in a pickle and you really needed to scrub, I would say it would be great for that. Use it on tubs or any porcelain in your bathroom. It's a workhorse. But so the pink stuff from Walmart works great. But the one I really love is Norwex. And they're one of those companies that's similar to Tupperware. You have to go through, a consultant. They're all over on the internet, so I'm sure you could find one easily. But that stuff is great. And then there's another company, H2O at Home, which is, I think, Norwex's competitor. Norwex is a Norwegian company, and H2O at Home is a French company. So they're both European companies, very similar. But theirs is a scouring clay. Scouring clay is what the H2O at Home people call it. But I just love that.
And the Norwex was also a paste?
Yep. So the pink stuff is the budget option, Walmart. Okay. The scouring clay is H2O at Home, and the cleaning paste is Norwex. And all those are great. And then with the magic eraser, just takes it to the next level. The magic eraser
Do you always use a magic eraser with those?
I do. I think I do. I'm trying to think. Yeah. I cleaned out my my front loading washing machine. You know how those can get real gunky and kind of moldy and gross. And I didn't use a magic eraser, but I used the paste, and I just put it on one of those blue kind of scouring pads and just scrubbed out that whole gasket,
like
and all
Scotch Brite or something like that.
Yeah. And it's great.
I'll have to look into all of that. That sounds, I love new cleaning tips. It inspires you a little bit like cooking. And you get really tired of cleaning.
Exactly. And there's
you have a new product
about this paste. It doesn't scratch things. So it's real smooth. So that's one thing when you start really scrubbing on stuff and you kind of worry you're going to scratch glass or whatever. It doesn't do that.
This you can just scrub away and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Do you have a hospitality story to share with us? Maybe something that's happened during one of your hospitality
I've had a couple of funny
seasons.
Things. I'll tell you, I can think of one off the top of my head, which is and I've told this one so many times because I love hospitality so much. And sometimes when people are looking in on someone who loves hospitality, they just assume like it's always been easy for you. You've probably always done this really well. And it's just and it is not true. It is funny. The first time, And nothing really remarkable about the hospitality, but my husband and I had just barely been married for a few weeks. We invited another couple from church to come over for dinner. And it was really the first time that I'd ever had people in my home or cooked. I'd never cooked for people before other than like my roommates or myself. And so I had to think through a menu and go to the store and buy it and do all the cooking and get it all ready. And it was shockingly difficult.
Yes.
It was shockingly difficult. And it's like, you watch your moms and your grandmas do this and you just think it just isn't that hard. And then I got in there and it was very difficult. And I just remember when they walked out the door, I shut the door and I turned around and I said, well, I'm never doing that again.
Never say never.
And I'm sure that the Lord was laughing down from heaven, like, yep. You're going to be doing this many more times. But thankfully my husband was encouraging and kept saying, you can do this. And over time it did get easier and easier. And really the less of myself that got wrapped up into it, the easier it became and the better it became. And then we had one hilarious story recently where we had a family over for dinner and they have a lot of kids, our kids' this age. And when they come, they're one of those families, them well, and everybody's really comfortable and the kids are having a great time. And we'd eaten outside, and after dinner, all the kids had gone into the house and the adults were on the patio, but we could like look into the dining room. The way our house is set up, there's big windows and you can kind of see into the kitchen and the dining room. And we're talking away and all of a sudden we hear the most horrendous crash of glass. And it doesn't sound like a window, it sounds like 20 windows. I mean, it's just like the most insane sound. What? And we all turn and look, and I have a chandelier. It's not really a chandelier but it's a light fixture over my dining room table that is a giant circle. And inside that circle are about 14 glass globes. And the whole light fixture had detached from the ceiling and it crashed onto the dining room table, and all like 14 of those globes had shattered across the dining room. And, I immediately laughed but the lady next to me, the mom of these children, she could see that it was her son standing there by it, like looking like.
How did an entire light fixture
just crash?
Come out of the ceiling? Was it a faulty installation, or was somebody hanging on?
Well, you wonder, wouldn't you? They were playing with a volleyball, and both of our kids were involved, but they got a volleyball out, and my daughter was like, bumping a volleyball around, and then this kid hit it, and apparently it shot straight up at the section of the light fixture that attaches to the ceiling and just nailed it just right and the whole thing. But I was just so grateful that it wasn't. I have this china cabinet in the dining room that has glass doors and is full of glass. And when I heard that sound, I thought that whole thing is tipped over and probably onto someone, and
right.
we're
having an emergency
so bad.
Visit.
So when I saw that it was just that, I was like, oh, that's
you were a little bit relieved.
I was relieved. But the mom sitting next to me, her son came out and he said, Mom, did that really just happen? She said,
like, yes, it did.
She said, yes, it did. And then she turned to me and she said, I just wish that the ground would open up. A crack in the ground would open up so that I could fall into it. She was horrified, but we laughed, and we were able to replace all those glass globes we ordered from the company. It wasn't that expensive, and now we're able to laugh about it.
It's just an object, and the kids were all safe and unharmed, which was the most important thing.
Yeah.
And the mom God had a lesson for her to learn in that too.
She survived. We're all still friends, and we're laughing about it now. So it's good.
You can survive all of the things that happen in childhood with each one of your kids. They're definitely going to embarrass you at times.
You'll get through it.
This too shall pass.
Yes. Well, and a lot of times when families with young kids will come in, I can sense that maybe they're a little nervous about breaking something, or kids standing on the sofa, or whatever. They just obviously they don't want to hurt anything in the house. And I always say, listen. Mm-hmm. You're good. No one could top that. We've been through that. We all survived.
Had the worst story. You can't top it.
So I've told it to moms of kids lots of times.
Mm-hmm. Like if something happens, it's okay.
It's totally fine.
Yes.
We'll get through it. Yeah.
Well, back to your first story. I remember the exact same thought going through my head when I was first married and starting doing hospitality on my own, or even just cleaning my own house. I thought, how in the world is this so hard? And I think part of it is when you're growing up in a home with mom, maybe some sisters, brothers, you each have different tasks. And so all of a sudden when it's just you and your husband, He's at work maybe and you're preparing things. It's just you, one person doing all the tasks. I remember having to adjust to that, especially I remember cleaning one day. I just had done the dishes and then I went and scrubbed the bathroom and I'm like, nobody else has done anything. I still have to vacuum and mop and dust. And I mean, just the list seemed endless. So I had to start doing the thing that people did, where it's like on this day you do this task and on this day you do this. I was overwhelmed, but it does get easier. Same thing with having people into your home. It gets easier.
Yeah. I always say it's like lifting weights or any exercise, any discipline. Like you have to get your hospitality muscles working and you got to just start. You just have to get after it and it's going to feel awkward and you're going to be a little sore afterwards for a while and it just gets easier and easier. So,
and you have to remember that the guests coming into your home just came from a home that is not perfect,
exactly.
that is not pristine, that had a mess as they were walking out the door. If they have children, they were probably, looking back as they closed the door, thinking of all the tasks that they had to do when they returned. They are not coming to your home expecting to walk into a magazine.
No.
Or for you to put on a big show. In fact, that would probably make them even more uncomfortable.
Yeah. I remember one time we were having a couple over that my husband had worked with and I was really scrubbing and making sure everything was clean. And I remember he walked in and he said, I've been to their house. I think they'll be a lot more comfortable if you just stop.
Stop making it look
quite
like
just leave a few things laying around. I think it'll really help. And that was the first time that even occurred to me. I was like, oh yeah.
They're not walking in, pulling on their white gloves and checking for dust.
Nope. Yeah. So it's so good. I feel like there've been so many opportunities for me to grow and sanctified. Hospitality has done that. And I think about my first, opportunity to do that as a newlywed and thinking, I'm never doing that again. Like that was terrible.
Right.
And then watching how the Lord has grown me and humbled me and helped me to be less self-centered. And it's just been so, so good. And, he's still doing that. I mean, I don't ever feel like I've arrived. There's certainly days where I get up and I think I am tired and I know I'm going to do a big dinner tonight. Lord, help me, do this. And he's always so faithful when you feel overwhelmed and you feel tired and you're not up for it. And some of the best hospitality comes out of just being really open-handed and really, not worrying about it.
I think that's a really good point to remember is that God does give us grace when we need it. He promises that he gives us grace. And we need to remember that even in the small things, or even when we think, would God give me grace to, I'm tired, I don't feel well. Will he give me grace to handle the work that's needed for a dinner tonight? Yes. The answer is yes. Absolutely.
Yes.
Even in the small things, you can stop, have a quick prayer, and that's probably the absolute best thing you can do before you start is, God, give me what I need to be able to get through my tasks today and give me the grace to handle it.
And help me to be faithful with the work you've given me and help me have a good attitude about it. And this to be about these people and a blessing to them. And I also never underestimate the power of a good playlist.
Tell me some ideas.
Oh, well, my favorite is, the Sunday Service Choir, Jesus is Born. That album is amazing.
Okay, going home tonight and playing that, testing it out.
It's just like pure gospel music, but it all has a happy beat and it's just full of joy. And you put that on a little bit louder than you probably should. And it's really hard to be in a bad mood. It's really hard
to be in a bad mood. It's hard to have low energy.
It's hard to have low energy and just be like, I can't believe I'm doing this again. Like it'll just change the tone of your thoughts and everything. I love it. It's a great album. So music. And I'm trying to think of I've made hospitality playlists and usually they're kind of seasonal. I did a birthday party for my husband this summer and he was born in 1974. So we got all music from 1974 and that's a pretty fun one to go, to throw on. Yeah. So
great ideas. Well, before I close, I have a poem I want to read and then play the music to. That ties in with this topic of hospitality and your home, welcoming people into your home. it does not have to be a perfect place. This poem was sent to me by David Erb. He is the director of the conservatory at NSA, New St. Andrews College here in Moscow, Idaho, and also a fellow of music there. This poem is by Ben Palpant, and he is an author. He can be found at benpalpant.com. He has written a book, at least one that I know of, and as well as some poetry. And the poem that he wrote was set to music by Dr. Erb. It's titled Come, Sit, Eat. And this is the poem. Come, here is my home, happy most of the time, don't mind the mess. Sit, here is my wooden table, scratched, heavy with food, leaning with memories. Eat, here is forgiveness, here is healing, here is dignity. Here, have some of my gladness. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you are inspired to hospitality like I have been. I hope you enjoyed that poem and that song. And thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us as well and sharing all of your tips.
You're welcome.
All right, until next time, bye for now.